Welcome to Health, Harmony, and Happiness with Kathy. I'm your host, Kathy Stricker. In my personal life, I am a wife to a dedicated law enforcement officer and mama to 3 lively littles. I'm an adamantine yoga teacher, health coach, community betterment advocate, and wellness enthusiast. But what I really like doing is connecting others with tools and resources that bring about health, harmony, and happiness. Whatever this looks like to you, I'm here to offer my own insights and tools from others that allow you to realize your full potential to live mindfully as your authentic, best self. Allow me to be a guide in discovering what works for you. So I'm talking to my friend Shelby Cruz today, who is an adamantine yoga teacher at the Des Moines Adamantine Yoga Studio. And she is a stay-at-home mom as well. So she's wrangling 3 kiddos and teaching adamantine yoga. She discovered, after being a yoga tourist for some time, the practice of adamantine yoga and fell in love and has never looked back. So listen in today to our conversation and her connection with the practice, as well as what she's discovered from a mind-body standpoint from practicing this style of yoga for quite some time now. Hi, Shelby. Thanks for taking the time to visit with me today. We're talking about adamantine yoga and your practice, both as a practitioner and as a teacher. So before we get started, tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to come on. I feel pretty honored to be on your podcast. So my name's Shelby Cruz. I live in Des Moines. I am a mom to 3 young monsters, humans, I think, most of the day. It's summer break though, so that's a little
sure.
to be determined. So I have a 9-year-old son and then 6-year-old twins. So our days are right now filled with a lot of noise. And if there's noise in the background, please forgive me. I've tried to put PBS Kids on as my babysitter to like get them to do their thing. But so I've been practicing yoga ish. I mean, I don't think it's really fair for me to say that I was practicing yoga before I found adamantine, but I was definitely touristing my way through yoga for the better part of 12 years or so before I kind of got more serious about it. And I became a certified yoga teacher in, I think, 2015. So I've got 4 or 5 years under my belt doing that. And then I've been teaching adamantine specifically I've been certified as an adamantine yoga teacher since last June. So it's been a full year and apprenticing for about a year before that. So
yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. It's the best.
It's a journey and it's so fun when you get to that point and you're ready to take on the next step, whether it's getting your advanced practitioner patch or moving into that teacher element and starting to assist. So it's definitely a lot of fun. How did you discover adamantine then in your touristing journey?
In my touristing journey. Okay. So actually James and I were just James is the founder. We were just talking about this the other day. I'm so fortunate that the people who came into my life at that time came into my life. So I had just finished my yoga teacher training and had a woman come in and talk about working with subset groups of people and specifically working with pregnant women. And as somebody who has been pregnant a few times and really remembered the crushing, I mean, this is funny that I'm saying this to you right now, right? But that crushing feeling of a baby on your body and not really being able to take a full deep breath and just the physical strength that it takes and the emotional strength that it takes to create a human, right? Yeah. It was I felt really drawn to help that group of people specifically and wanting to make sure that I would do it in a specific way. So I took a prenatal yoga teacher training. So I do have a certification as a prenatal yoga teacher as well. Though I've never taught a prenatal yoga class specifically. I've pregnant women like just a prenatal yoga class. So it's kind of funny. So I told James the other day that I basically, paid a couple $1,000s to find Adamantine Yoga, because that teacher told me I had started down a path to look at someone else. I knew that I needed more from my yoga experience. At the time, I was practicing a hot yoga, and with just when they offered classes, and with my family schedule, like my husband is a professor and teaches nights, and my kids were super young. They were like 3 and 6. I couldn't get to yoga more than 2 or 3 times a week, and I craved it. Like I needed it. I needed that calm. I needed that quiet. I needed that time for just me. And so this prenatal yoga teacher was like, hey, why don't you maybe push pause with this other person, Sandy
okay.
Hoover.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so you took prenatal yoga teacher training with Sandy, and she was practicing Adamantine at the time.
Yeah, she was practicing at the time. Yeah, and she just encouraged me to maybe give James a try, and I was hesitant because like I had already had one meeting with this other person that was trying to do something sort of similar to what he's doing, but I had also had like, when you get that feeling, but you're not sure, you want what's at the other end so bad that you're kind of willing to walk through whatever in order to get there. That's where I was at. Like I wanted something different. I wanted to practice yoga every single day. I wanted to do something completely different than I was currently doing. So anyways, I trusted Sandy. I trust her and I loved her. And like, she's super nurturing. And I was like, okay, I'm going to meet with James. And then I did. And I have it marked in my calendar. I met with him on September 24th.
That's awesome.
Or maybe it was September 23rd. I can't remember, because I started on like September 24th. Like we met, this was back when he was like meeting with people one-on-one before we actually started. And we sat down and like, I had a great conversation, and he seemed like a guy that could like take me where I wanted to go. And and so I was like, here's the funny part. Like, I don't even know if I've ever told him this, but the part that sealed the deal for me was he said, when do you want to start? And I said, can I start tomorrow? He was like, yeah. So James was like, he was like, you can start tomorrow. And I was like, I'm in. Take my money. Like, let's do this. I'm in. Let's do this. And that's almost 4 years ago now. So
that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Yeah. That's kind of my experience when I met James too. I was going through teacher training with him, and it was the first time in my entire life that I had like been someplace and I got chills, and it was like this presence came over me, and I was just instantly knew this is where I'm supposed to be. And for some reason, this is the path that my life needs to go on right now. And this is exactly where I'm supposed to be at exactly the right time. And it was, and I don't know that I've had that feeling ever since. Like, I can't remember a time before in my life when I felt like that. And I can't remember a time after, but I got the chills. I was sitting in this hotel conference room listening to him, and I was just like, okay, like this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it's done so much for me. And and that's the first weekend that I began to learn Adamantine Yoga. So
yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's so funny, because I think I was maybe 6 months in when he offered an advanced practitioner training, and I took it, and I was so like, I thought I had all of those same experiences, like, and this now in a group with other people, and like listening to him talk instead of, whispering back and forth. And actually I worked with Anne, so I didn't really have a lot of like contact with James when I first started, and listening to him and like having a little bit of a foundation, in things, and then hearing him talk even more. And I was like, this is like, not to go like to like Eastern, my teacher, like this is the guy that like can help me become the version of me that I want to be, and then can help like balance out my life. And so I literally, this training was over, I've been there 6 months, and I look at him, we don't know each other. I'm still scared of him. And I was like, I just need you to know that I want to teach this. Like, I want to teach this Sunday. So it took me 2 more years, but like I got there. And I like, it's not like me really to like call it out like that. It's not really like me to like I said, I was still scared of him, but I just needed him to know that like I had found it, and like I knew it.
Yeah.
So I was like, I need to do this.
When you started, were you in the loft, or were you at the current space right now?
Yeah, I've always been at the current space. So yeah.
Yeah. It's just amazing how for some people, the practice is just, it speaks to you and some people have to still explore a little
Yeah.
bit more and
Yeah.
think, well, I can't. But I think you were in a place where you were looking for
I
something
was
for yourself.
definitely.
That's just like me. Like I knew that I needed a yoga practice, and I was tired of dabbling in other styles and piecing together my own practice. I
Right.
wanted a clear path. And that's what
Yeah.
adamantine yoga does, is it gives you this tool or this path that can just, I don't know,
Yeah.
be modified for wherever you are in life.
It's amazing. And like when you're like for the mom of young kids, it was such a like there was a lot of discussions that had to happen at my house. Like we're my husband, I was a stay-at-home mom. Um and I mean I still am, but my kids are in school and I teach yoga twice a day now, so I don't know if that still applies. But anyways, like first, right? And now I wanted to like do this thing that was going to cost money every single month. And I was like, like, we got to figure this out. Like, because I have to do this. Like, this is the thing that I absolutely have to do. I have to practice here. And like, we had kind of like, before we had all the information, had those conversations where you kind of set like some parameters to like guide us through the things. And like, it just all fell like right in line. Like we kind of had talked about like, well, what do you think we can do in terms of a monthly payment? And like, the price was right within that point. And like how can we make this work? Like I'm willing to get up super early to go and do this. And that way, like we can still get everybody else and handle all of the other things that need to be handled with 3 and 6-year-olds. And so it was just like, it just all, I was absolutely meant
So
to do
how
this.
did you, but speak to that a little bit more for people who that's their biggest struggle is figuring out not only the financial. And
yeah,
it's cheaper at my studio than it is at James's, but
yeah.
it's the financial component as well as having that conversation with your spouse, because that is a huge thing. And I have single parents also who are coming in, and that's a struggle. Like I
hard.
commend them so much, because if you're getting out of bed early in the morning to come in, and I don't have afternoon classes, so the only option is morning.
Yeah.
How do you have that conversation? What do you do? And what does that look like?
Well, for a long time, that's why I did yoga at the gym, right at the Y or wherever, because they had childcare. They had a place for me to put my children. And that served me for a while, but I knew I just wasn't getting what I needed. So that maybe a little bit of, I don't know, this could be borderline TMI, but I was in kind of like a dark space at that time in my life too. And I didn't know exactly what was wrong with me. I just knew something was not right. And so like again, like I said, like all of these things happened for me at the same time. Like I started yoga, and a month later I found a great therapist that like helped me to deal with the things that I was going through. And like, so like all of these things have come together, which has been really rewarding for me to look back now almost 4 years into this journey and see like how well aligned all of these things were to help bring me like to like find harmony in my life again, instead of just feeling so pulled in every different direction. So the conversation honestly was like, my husband's name is Jared. And I was like, dude, I need this. Like, I don't know what is going on with me, but here's what I know. I feel better when I do yoga. So like, we have to figure this out. Like, and that's where it was just like like for him, like money is the thing that he thinks of first. Right. So like I think in every relationship, one person, like the person that you're partnering with has something that you probably kind of know, like that's where they're going to fall back on. Like that's their first thing. Like if I can solve this problem for them, then we can move our conversation forward. And for Jared, I know that it's just like, it's money. So it's like, okay, like, let's figure this out. Like what makes sense in our budget? And we kind of sat down and looked at the budget and decided like, this was the range of things that would not put a I don't know, damper on the rest of our life. Like we'd still be able to pay all of our bills and I could do this other thing. And it just became really like a flat out money conversation for him. And for me, it was so much more than that. Like I just knew I needed it. I think what I've learned over the years of dappling through sales experience and marketing and small business and things like that is that it's never really about the money. People will spend their money on the things that are important to them. So if you're willing to, if you really want something, you will find a way to make that work, right? Like you will have a garage sale. I mean, like, you will do whatever it takes. You will sell some of your possessions on Craigslist. You will do whatever it takes in order to find the money to be able to do the thing that you want to do.
Where
And
you
like,
put your money is where your priorities are.
yeah,
So
that's what's
it's,
important to you.
yeah,
Right. So that, and that's just like, with like, he could tell, like, he just knew. He was like, yes, okay, and here's where we can make this work. So I'm super fortunate that I do have a partner that can help me. Like, single parents are, I can't even, I don't have any words because they're so amazing and I don't know how they do all of that. But I'm super fortunate that I do have a partner that did that and that we could make it work within our budget. But I would have done anything. I would have sold possessions in order to make that happen, or like, considered trying to take on a part-time job.
yeah.
Like, there are always ways. It's just how bad you want it, I hope that's not like preachy. It's just been my experience and I believe it to be true.
I believe it too. I completely believe it. I'm a Dave Ramsey person. So like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all about budgets and spending your money where you need to spend it at the time. But I also think that a yoga practice, your self-care and your health needs to be accounted for as well. And if this is the place or a place where you find relief and where you can find solace in and peace in making the chaos in your life come together, then why wouldn't you put your money in here? Because if you don't, you're going to be spending your money down the road on medical bills and therapist bills and all those other things that come into play when you let your health slip away.
Exactly.
So you kind of mentioned that everything was aligning for you to go into this practice. Are you a spiritual person or a religious person at all? Like, where did that alignment?
I'm definitely a spiritual person. Like, I kind of think of things. There's always an up and down for me. I tend to go from one extreme to the other, and then someone's eventually. And I think I'm coming back to my balance here. So I definitely think that, like, I don't know that I would believe that like everything happens for a reason, because I think that like things will show up for you if you're willing to see them, and if you're open to the opportunity, and like, I don't know, like, you can, like, things, I don't know, I don't really know how to say this, Kathy. This is like, you threw me for a loop.
I know, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you about this.
No, it's okay. I'm trying to settle into, like, I want to make sure to say what I actually believe. But
when you decide that you want something and you need something and you put it out there, whether through thought or word to the universe, it starts to come to you and it starts to align.
Manifestation.
But you have to be able to be open to and firm in believing that this is what you want your life to look like, right?
Yeah.
And this is who you want to be. So then you ask for that help from whomever it is, whether it's God, Jesus, spiritual guides, I don't know.
Just the universe,
anything in the universe, it will start to align. Would you agree?
I do. I really do think that, like, you get, like attracts like, right? So you get back what you put out. Mm-hmm. And that whole kind of like the secret idea of like that there, I don't believe in scarcity. Like, I'm constantly working on myself to have an abundance mindset. But like, I think like you get back from people and from experiences what you put into it. And so like when you really, and you also have to like ask for what you need. You have to communicate to people that like, this is what I need from you. And sometimes give them some really great boundaries so that they stay right within that lane if that's what you need at the time. And then just stay open to the experience. Like, I'm a big fan of Danielle Laporte. She's an author, kind of like a spiritual writer. And she in one of her books talks about having a wide open heart and a big effing fence around it, right? Like, so that you are like ready and open to experiences, but that you have clear set boundaries. And I really like that. I try to think about like, how can I soften into this, and how can I be more open and more loving and less judgy and less, control freaky? Because those are ways of being that I've been for a really long time, that through my yoga practice, truly through my yoga practice, I can now see from a different perspective, and I can see how they're probably not really serving me. They're certainly not serving my children. they're probably not serving my marriage, like this, my whole life. So like, how can I learn a little bit more surrender, and how can I learn, like just the four tenets, like it all just speaks, to my life in such a great way. And also, how can I find gratitude through all of these things?
Yeah. What was the kind of tipping point, if you will? What was the tipping point that got you to that point where things started aligning for you?
I this is such a bad answer. I was depressed and anxious, and I realized it, and I had something else happen in a interpersonal relationship with a friend that like wrecked me, and at that point I was like, oh my God, like what is happening? Who am I becoming? And like, could I potentially turn into like that? I do not want that for my life. And so like, it was this matter of like, okay, this is it. Like I have been pouring out from an empty cup for years. And now I need to like start filling this baby back up again. Right. So it was like, I knew I needed a yoga practice. And I knew that a little bit from my experience in a yoga teacher training, where like for 1 month, for one weekend a month, I would go somewhere, and then I would go back to my regular life for the rest of the month. And I would just be like, you could just feel like the hole in that balloon and the air seeping back out of it. Right. Like I just didn't feel right.
I totally get that.
So I really do think like the idea that like, for me specifically, like yoga was the first place to start, but then that also like I needed therapy, like I needed someone to talk to too, to teach me new things and new ways to communicate and new ways to deal with old traumas, like stuff, you know how it is, like it's always stuff from when you were a kid that's coming back in. And so like I really honestly feel fortunate that like I got to find all of those things at the same time. So while that relationship in my life doesn't exist anymore, like I can find gratitude for the fact that like that person like blew up their life, and it kind of blew mine up. Like I got the shrapnel from it at the same time. And like, thank God, because it led me to like all of these things that I desperately needed. And I'm so much happier now. Like I'm so much healthier, and I'm a better parent. I'm a better wife. Like I'm a better human, because like I did all of those things.
And all of those things created this picture of more health, harmony, and happiness in your life, basically.
Oh my God. Absolutely.
That's so
absolutely
cool. That's so good. And you said that's a bad answer. You were depressed and anxious. Absolutely not a bad answer.
It's just
that's
the truth, right?
And I think that people need to hear that. I think that we get to that point that's where I was when I found James, and when I have another podcast on this specifically, so I'm not going to go into detail, but I was in a job where I was a remote worker, and I didn't have any peers or people to interact with throughout the day. Like I was lonely.
So hard.
And I needed that social. And I came from working full time at the Y to going to work from home, where all my coworkers were, 50 plus
somewhere
miles
else
away. And
it sounds so dreamy, but it's so lonely.
It is. It really is. When you feed off of energy of other people. And that's kind of how I feel good, is that I get to interact with other people.
Yeah.
So I was in the same place, and we were struggling with fertility at the same time. So like I was down. It was not good, but somehow I let adamantine in, and it changed my life. So I don't know.
That's awesome. Yeah. We had fertility struggles too. And that was part of the reason I was depressed, because I never dealt with it. I just shoved it down and kept that's a whole nother topic, but but honestly, like that is the reason that like the physical act of yoga makes sense in my body. Like it has given me an opportunity to release stuff that I didn't know I was still holding on to. And I still am, right? Like I've been because of how I started, and because of my deep desire to like find something different. When I started, like I started 5 days a week, at least, if not 6, right from the get-go. So I've essentially had a 5 or 6 day a week yoga practice for the last almost 4 years. I know that everybody comes in at that level of like commitment right out of the
Right.
gate, but like that, I knew that that was what I needed. And I'm still amazed that like there's still stuff that like how deep did I have that buried? Like what is that stuff that's going on like in my left hamstring that's not on my right side? And like what is that? Or why did it take me 4 years to be able to touch my own hands together in shoulder roll? Right. Well, because it's my personality, right? Because that's who I am and that's where I hold my stuff. And that's gonna be like like until I change my personality and how I relate to the world, like those are going to continue to be issues. And I find that fascinating.
I do too.
I just,
That's so good to know. And it's so good to hear from you that it can take a long time for some things to develop. Our physical body
slow.
holds, I know, but our physical body holds all of these mental patterns that we've created over
Yeah.
the years. And that's one thing that I don't think a lot of people connect with or realize. So when you get discouraged after 6 months or 1 year of practicing and your hands are not, you're not binding in shoulder roll one,
Right.
who cares? Because there's other
Right.
stuff buried deep there that you're holding on to. And until you can realize that and remember that, then it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
It still is a
So
struggle no matter what.
it's
but-
still a struggle, right? It's just
Yeah.
amazing. And I can remember, like specific points during my practice where that would line up with, I was doing something really hard. I do a kind of therapy that's called EMDR, right? So like it releases and helps you to reprocess old trauma and things like that. In addition to some other stuff, but that was like what I've done the most work through. And I can remember that I would be going through some like really hard stuff from the past. And then at the same time, it was time for me to start learning how to press up into wheel and how I could not breathe. I could not keep my breath. Like I would almost hyperventilate in those positions. And I would like get into that, like come back down and turn over to take shoulder roll 2 where like my face is down on the mat and I would burst into tears because like I had felt so vulnerable and so like wide open in that places and all of like, no, like I wanted to stay here. I did not want to come. This is not video.
Because you
Sorry.
are open. It's okay. I know.
Right. Like I wanted to curl up and go fetal position. I did not want to open up and extend through my chest and my stomach and like my psoas and my quads and all of those things. Like that movement was so foreign to my body. I had pressed up into wheel once in my teacher training before I started adamantine yoga. And some things come along faster than others, but like that ideal, I think when that happens, it's because you're dealing with those areas of your life more quickly. Like I did a ton of work through old trauma and, I had never done wheel before I started adamantine 4 years ago, but now it's okay. Like I can drop back from standing and I can stand up without assistance in those places. So like that has changed relatively quickly for me, but my shoulders, nope. The thing that lots of people walk into the studio with for the first time and just like drop an arm back behind them and grab their hand. I'm always like, oh, look at you. You're so awesome. I'm only a little bit jealous.
I could talk forever with you on this mind-body connection because it is so good and you have so many good insights. But we've got to keep going because of your time.
We do.
So
yes, thank you.
Tell people what you do, like where you are at the Adamantine Studio, when you teach, and where they can find you on social, I guess.
Okay. So once I drank the adamantine Kool-Aid, I'm sure James would love that I'm using that analogy. It's not his podcast though, is it? Okay. But once I had a taste for that slowly, because I was resistant to let it go, like everything else fell away. And I knew right away that I wanted to teach it, but I was resistant to stop doing the other things that I had been doing. But now it's all I do. And like, it became clear to me kind of over this winter, like I was still doing some group led classes, like a more typical yoga experience. And I just realized that I really didn't want to do those things. And I didn't have the energy for that. So I finally was just like, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I'm just teaching at the studio now. So I teach from 6 a.m. until 9 a.m. In the Des Moines studio. And then I take the afternoon class also. So I'm from about 4:30 to 6 in the evenings. Where, Monday through Friday, usually I have Saturday off where I just get to go in and like enjoy my practice without having to teach. And sometimes I teach too. It just kind of depends on what's happening. So yeah, I'm like there all the time. And I
She
love
is,
it.
and she is so wonderful to have assist you. So if you're one of my students and you go to Des Moines sometime and want to practice, Shelby's a great teacher, and
Thanks.
she will definitely help you. And she's fun to just listen to and follow on her social media and everything. So Shelby Cruz.
Oh yeah, social media. Yeah, Shelby Cruz on Facebook and at Cruz S or Cruises, I guess, but on Instagram. But it's mostly just pictures of my kids. So
Yeah,
if you don't want to see
it's
pictures
still
of my
fun,
kids, then you
right?
don't have to follow me.
It's still fun. Well,
Yeah, it is.
okay, I'm going to send you blessings right now because you got to get your kiddos
Thank
to
you.
swimming lessons. So stay calm.
I do. Thank
Hopefully
you.
you can wrangle
No, I'm
them
good.
and
We've got
they're
so
good
much
to go.
time. He's all ready.
Good.
He's all ready. We've been at this for almost a decade, so we're finally getting our poop in a
Good.
group.
Good.
Hey, this was so fun, Kathy. Thank you. I
Yeah,
could
you're
sit
welcome.
here and talk to
Thank
you all
you
day
for
too.
taking the time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
The Shelby Cruz, everyone. Thank you so much again, Shelby. It was a pleasure talking to you. I love how she talked about how she needed to make herself a priority, and she knew that, and she knew that she needed the yoga practice for her health, and how she and her husband then made that a priority in their life and in their lifestyle. The other thing that I really appreciate that she talked about was going through that really dark space and having to get kind of as low as she could, or having a relationship kind of explode on her in order for her to realize that she needed to be led in a different direction. And sometimes that's just how life is. And we think that something is the end when it's really the beginning. And it takes going through that hard stuff to maybe get to the thing that's going to bring our light back out in the front again. So I hope you all enjoyed this episode today. Next week, we start a new series. It'll be a little bit of a crossover event, or crossover episode rather. And we'll talk a little bit about adamantine with my guest, but then we'll talk about the next series as well. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you hear, help us grow this podcast by sharing it with even just one other person. And it would mean so much to me if you would take a moment of your time to write a review. Your comments and feedback are what help me continue to bring you topics and guests that can help you and others on their journey in creating health, harmony, and happiness. Remember to head on over to CairnYogaWellness.com to get the show notes and links from today's episode. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Cairn Yoga Wellness, and to continue connecting with more resources that could help you enhance health, harmony, and happiness in your own life, subscribe to this podcast. Thanks again for listening.